The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the hum of the ceiling fan, the only sound swirling in the tense air. Every face turned toward the woman standing at the center. Her name was Alana, dignified, calm on the outside, but burning with disbelief inside. She had just learned the truth. Her husband, Marcus, the man she had trusted for over 15 years, had not only divorced her in secret months earlier, but had also wiped $200 million clean from their joint account. The papers were laid before her like a cruel joke, signed by him, stamped by the court, and dated long before she had even suspected betrayal. But the true dagger wasn't just the money stolen. It was the revelation whispered by the lawyer across the bench. "Ma'am, you are the majority investor in Global Frontier Holdings. Your assets across real estate, oil, tech, and mining are worth over $800 million. Your husband knew and acted before you could ever discover it." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Alana's knees weakened. The man she thought was her partner had played her like a fool, stripping her of loyalty, trust, and fortune. Marcus didn't flinch. He sat there smug, tapping his pen, eyes cold as steel. It wasn't the look of a husband ashamed. It was the stare of a predator satisfied with his hunt. Alana opened her mouth to speak, but the words failed. The weight of betrayal pressed so heavily she could hardly breathe. And then Marcus leaned forward, his voice low, cutting the silence like a blade. "You were never supposed to find out." The room erupted into chaos, shouts from lawyers, cries from onlookers, and the banging of the judge's gavel. But Alana stood frozen, tears burning her eyes. Her body trembling as the world around her collapsed. What she didn't know yet was that this was only the beginning. Marcus's betrayal ran far deeper than the stolen millions. The secret divorce and the vanished money were just pieces of a much darker web, one that would drag her into a storm of deceit, greed, and vengeance. And as the gavel struck again, signaling the court's adjournment, a single thought consumed her. How long had he been planning this? The answer, hidden in the shadows of their marriage, would shake everything she believed about love, family, and trust. The story didn't begin in that courtroom. It began years earlier, in the warm heartbeat of Atlanta, where Alana and Marcus's lives first intertwined. Back then, Alana was known in the neighborhood as the kind of woman who lit up every space she entered. Her smile could soften the harshest spirit. Her laugh carried through rooms like music. She was ambitious, yes, but grounded, deeply connected to her African roots through her parents, who had migrated from Lagos. They taught her the importance of community, respect, and wisdom. Marcus, on the other hand, came into her life like a whirlwind. Charming, polished, and full of big dreams, he worked as a financial consultant. He had that rare gift of making people feel like they were the only one in the room, a trait that won over Alana's heart quickly. At first, their love was like a folktale itself, an unlikely union between a woman with deep cultural ties and a man who lived and breathed ambition. They married, built a home, and soon Marcus convinced Alana to start investing. "You've got the vision," he told her, holding her hands across their modest dining table one night. "I've got the strategy. Together, we can create something legendary." What Alana didn't realize was that every investment, every signature she trusted Marcus to handle, slowly became her silent empire. He made sure her name was on documents, her shares held majority, her assets piled high. Yet he kept her in the dark, making her believe they were modestly successful. The truth was, Marcus had been preparing his betrayal for years. But back then, Alana saw only love. She saw a husband who encouraged her to pursue her passion for art, who clapped the loudest when she organized cultural events in their neighborhood, who laughed with her late into the night when they had nothing but each other. The betrayal was unimaginable then. The storm began to brew quietly. One evening, Alana noticed Marcus working late in his study, stacks of documents spread across his desk. He quickly covered them when she walked in. "Just numbers," he said with a laugh. "Nothing exciting." She trusted him. Why wouldn't she? But weeks turned into months, and Marcus grew more distant. He traveled more frequently, always for business, always leaving Alana with vague details. She chalked it up to his ambition. Until one night, while cleaning the study, she stumbled across a strange envelope hidden under a stack of magazines. Inside were legal documents, papers she didn't fully understand at the time, with words like separation of assets and petition. Her chest tightened. She wanted to confront him immediately, but something inside told her to wait, to gather more. That was the first seed of suspicion. What Marcus never counted on was Alana's resilience. She was the daughter of a woman who raised her to read between the lines, to trust instincts over words. So, quietly, she began to watch. She noticed the sudden withdrawals from their joint account, disguised as business expenses. She noticed the cold way Marcus looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. And then she noticed the other woman, a whispered name on his phone, a scent of perfume on his shirt, a smile too soft for a colleague. Alana's heart broke piece by piece, but she remained silent, watching, waiting. It wasn't until the day she was summoned to court, papers thrust into her hands by a stranger, that everything came crashing down. She wasn't just facing infidelity. She was facing a betrayal so calculated it stripped her of her dignity. Her husband had legally ended their marriage without her knowledge. And while she believed they were still together, still building, he had drained $200 million from their shared fortune and secured it under his own name. Worse yet, he had done it knowing she was worth nearly $1 billion, something she had been too trusting, too blind to see. As the chapter of their courtroom revelation closed, the folktale undertone lingered, because in African stories, betrayal of trust was never the end. It was the spark that lit the fire of transformation. For Alana, this was not just about the money. It was about reclaiming her power, her identity, and the empire she never realized was hers. And while Marcus believed he had won, he had unknowingly set in motion forces much older and stronger than greed. Because in the land of her ancestors, betrayal carried a price, and Alana was about to learn how to collect it. The night after the courtroom chaos, Alana sat alone in her living room, staring at the silent walls of her mansion. The chandelier above her head swayed slightly, as though mocking her stillness. Her life, which had once seemed steady and bright, now felt like it was crumbling piece by piece, and she could not even trace the beginning of the fall. Her mind replayed Marcus's cold words. "You were never supposed to find out." It wasn't just the arrogance in his voice, it was the certainty. The way he said it made her realize he had mapped everything long before she suspected anything. That realization was unbearable. But beneath her pain, something else stirred. Something her mother had once whispered when she was a child in Nigeria, during a night of storytelling under the moonlight. When the spider spins its web too wide, it forgets the broom is always waiting. Marcus thought he had trapped her completely, but the broom, the truth, justice, her own resilience, still lay within reach. Years earlier, before the empire, before the betrayals, Alana's life had been simple. She had grown up in a bustling neighborhood in Atlanta, but her home was a cultural fortress. Her parents spoke Yoruba at home, cooked traditional dishes, and filled her childhood with proverbs that seemed silly then, but glowed with meaning now. "Money can buy a bed, not sleep," her father used to say when she fretted about finances in college. "A man who builds his house on deceit builds it on sinking sand," Her mother reminded her the day she introduced Marcus. Back then, Alana thought those warnings were exaggerations. She believed Marcus was different. He was ambitious, polished, and attentive. He bought her flowers without reason, left her notes in the mornings, and promised her the world. And for years he delivered, or so she thought. The investments were his idea. He said their combined talents would turn ordinary opportunities into gold. He wasn't wrong. At first it was a small real estate venture, buying a rundown block of apartments, renovating them, and renting them out. The profits rolled in faster than expected. Then came shares in a local tech startup, which exploded after it was bought by a Silicon Valley giant. Marcus encouraged her to sign more and more documents, always assuring her it was just formality. He wanted her name there because he said, "You're the visionary. The companies need to see you're serious." Alana laughed at the time. She wasn't the visionary. She was just a woman in love, following her husband's lead. But as the years passed, the small ventures grew into titanic holdings. Oil fields in Ghana, mining contracts in South Africa, properties in London, tech stocks in New York. All of it carried her name. But Marcus was the gatekeeper of the knowledge. He controlled what she saw, what she knew, and what she believed. To Alana, they were still just comfortable. To Marcus, they were kings on the chessboard, and he was already planning his checkmate. The betrayal wasn't born overnight. It had roots. It began when Marcus started surrounding himself with men Alana barely knew. They weren't neighbors or friends. They were sharks in tailored suits, men who smiled too wide and shook hands too tightly. She noticed their whispers, the way they paused when she walked into the room. Then came the secrecy. Trips out of town without clear explanations. Late nights with his phone glued to his hand. Arguments brushed off as stress from work. And then, the other woman. Her name was Serena. Younger, glamorous, with a voice as soft as silk. Alana caught her name on Marcus's phone once, the letters flashing across the screen late at night. The next day, Marcus claimed it was a client. But Alana's instincts screamed louder than his words. Still, she stayed silent. Love makes silence heavy, and fear of breaking what you've built makes you swallow your suspicions. By the time Marcus executed his secret divorce, Alana was already too tangled in his web to see the escape. He filed the papers while on a business trip. He signed everything while she was hosting a cultural fundraiser, celebrating African art and music with the community. And he made sure she knew nothing until the betrayal was complete. The audacity of it all was almost admirable. Almost. But Marcus had overlooked one thing. Folktales never end with the trickster unpunished. After the court session, Alana drove to her parents' old home, a modest brick house at the edge of town. The house had been empty since their passing, but she still kept it standing, like a shrine to her roots. That night she walked barefoot into the living room, lit a single candle, and sat cross-legged on the rug. She whispered her mother's proverbs aloud, one by one, letting them fill the silence. When the rain falls, it does not choose one roof alone. The lion does not turn when a small dog barks. But the one that struck deepest was this: when wealth blinds a man, wisdom restores the woman. Tears filled her eyes. She wasn't blind anymore. The next morning, she visited the lawyer who had revealed the truth about her investments. His name was Carter Williams, a calm man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He spread the documents across his desk, showing her line after line of her assets. "This is all yours, Mrs. Bennett," he said firmly. "Marcus cannot erase it. He tried to exploit it, but the law protects majority shareholders. And you, ma'am, are the majority in more companies than you realize." Alana's hands trembled as she touched the papers. 800 million, she whispered. Yes, Carter nodded. And if the projections hold, it could cross 1 billion in less than 3 years. Alana's breath caught. She had been living like a woman with a comfortable fortune, not like the heiress of a near-billion-dollar empire. Marcus had known. He had seen the numbers, counted the dollars, and chosen betrayal over loyalty. But now, Alana saw the path. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was hers and protecting it from the man who thought he had already won. Marcus, meanwhile, wasn't celebrating. He sat in his luxury condo downtown, staring at the balance in his private account. $200 million sat there, untouched, glowing on the screen like a prize. But instead of satisfaction, unease gnawed at him. He underestimated her. He thought Alana would crumble, broken by the betrayal. He thought she would retreat quietly, never questioning the truth. But the fire in her eyes at the courtroom hinted at something else, something dangerous. Marcus poured himself a glass of whiskey and muttered to himself, "She doesn't know what's coming next." Because for him, this wasn't just about money. It was about power, and he wasn't about to let Alana rise above him, not after all the years he spent building his plan. Back at her mansion, Alana received a letter the following week. No stamp, no return address, just a folded sheet slipped under her front gate. The message inside was short and chilling. "Walk away, or you'll regret knowing the truth." Her hands shook as she read it. But then, a strange calm washed over her. Marcus was afraid. That's why he was sending threats. That's why he was scrambling. He knew she wasn't the same woman who once trusted blindly. And for the first time, Alana felt the strength of her ancestors standing behind her. Folktales often remind us that betrayal awakens hidden wisdom. And now, Alana was awake. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a force, preparing to fight back. And Marcus, with all his cunning, had no idea that the empire he tried to steal would become the weapon of his downfall. The letter burned in Alana's hand long after she had read it. Its words were short, but their weight was heavy. "Walk away, or you'll regret knowing the truth." It wasn't signed, but Alana didn't need a signature to know who had sent it. The phrasing, the arrogance, the silent threat, it reeked of Marcus. He was trying to frighten her back into silence, to make her fold under the pressure. But Alana was no longer the woman who overlooked his late-night trips or ignored the scent of another woman's perfume. She tore the letter into pieces and let the shreds fall into the fire crackling in her hearth. As the flames consumed them, she whispered under her breath, "You underestimate me, Marcus." That night, Alana dreamed of her late mother. She stood at the edge of a wide river, wrapped in her head tie and flowing Ankara dress, the moonlight shimmering across her face. She spoke in that calm, deliberate voice Alana remembered from childhood stories. "Daughter, the python waits quietly in the grass, but when it strikes, its strength is unmatched. You have been quiet for too long. Now it is time to strike." Alana woke with tears on her cheeks and a fire in her chest. She knew she couldn't fight Marcus alone, not against the network of businessmen, lawyers, and shadowy figures who seemed to orbit him. She needed allies, people who believed in justice, people who would help her understand the empire she never realized she owned. And so, she made her first call. The next day, Alana met with Carter, the lawyer who had revealed her hidden wealth. They sat in his office surrounded by stacks of files, the air heavy with dust and paper. "Marcus won't stop," Carter said grimly. "200 million is not enough for a man like him. He'll want control of the whole empire." Alana leaned forward, her voice firm. "Then we can't let him. I want to know everything. Every company, every share, every asset with my name on it." Carter's lips curved into a small smile. That's what I was hoping you'd say. He slid a thick folder across the desk. Inside were pages detailing her holdings. She traced her finger along the lines: properties in Abuja, Lagos, and Accra, mining rights in Zambia, oil partnerships in Angola, stocks in Silicon Valley, even farmland in the U.S. Midwest. The scale of it left her breathless. She wasn't just wealthy, she was a titan without realizing it. And now she understood why Marcus had orchestrated such a detailed betrayal. But Carter wasn't finished. He tapped his pen against the folder. There's something else. A board meeting at Global Frontier Holdings next week. You are the majority shareholder. Marcus has been attending in your place, presenting himself as though he represents you. Alana's brows furrowed. He's impersonating me? Yes, Carter replied. But if you appear, if you walk into that meeting, you'll take your rightful seat. And once you do, Marcus will no longer be able to operate in the shadows. He'll have to face you publicly. The thought sent a shiver down Alana's spine. But it also lit a spark of determination. Marcus, meanwhile, was already preparing his next move. He sat in a dimly lit bar across town, nursing a glass of whiskey, while Serena leaned against his shoulder. She was the woman who had replaced Alana in his life, at least in his bed. But unlike Alana, Serena was fully aware of the schemes. She thrived on them. You've got the 200, she purred, tracing her finger along his jawline. Why not disappear? We could start fresh in Europe, or Dubai. Leave all this behind. Marcus's eyes hardened. Because it's not enough. She doesn't deserve any of it. I built this empire. I advised her. I made every connection. I pulled every string. Without me, she'd still be some small-time community organizer. Serena smirked. And you'll take it all? All of it, Marcus said, his voice low and dangerous. And she'll have nothing left but regret. But Marcus wasn't the only one scheming. On the morning of the Global Frontier Holdings board meeting, Alana walked into the corporate tower downtown, dressed in a sleek black suit, her hair pinned back, her presence commanding. Carter walked beside her, briefcase in hand. The receptionist's eyes widened as she gave her name. Mrs. Bennett, you're here in person. Alana simply nodded, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she made her way toward the boardroom. When she pushed the doors open, the room fell silent. At the long, polished table, Marcus sat at the head, surrounded by executives. His face froze when he saw her. Alana, he said, his voice dripping with false warmth. What a surprise. Alana's gaze was steady, her voice calm but sharp. Not a surprise, Marcus. A return. This is my seat. Gasps rippled around the room. Carter laid the documents on the table, showing proof of her majority shares. The board members exchanged uneasy glances, realizing the man they had been deferring to was not the true power in the room. For the first time, Marcus's mask cracked. His jaw tightened, his hands clenched. He had lost control of the narrative. But Alana didn't gloat. She simply sat at the head of the table, her posture regal, her voice steady. From today forward, I will be overseeing my own empire. The meeting continued, but the tension in the room never eased. Marcus remained silent, his mind racing, plotting. He had underestimated her once, and now the world had seen her reclaim her throne. But Marcus wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. That night, as Alana returned home, she found her gate wide open. The security cameras had been smashed, and her house was eerily quiet. She stepped cautiously inside, her heart pounding, and stopped dead in the living room. On her dining table sat a single red rose, its petals scattered across a piece of paper. The note read, "Queens don't last long without their kings." Her blood ran cold. Marcus wasn't just trying to strip her of money now, he was trying to frighten her into surrender. But Alana knew one truth. Fear was the final weapon of a desperate man, and she refused to surrender. The folktale of betrayal had reached its next chapter. The spider's web was tightening, but the broom had already begun to sweep. Elena was no longer the woman who didn't know her worth. She was the woman who had seen her empire, felt her power, and reclaimed her throne. But Marcus was preparing to strike back in ways she could not yet imagine, and the price of betrayal was about to rise. The rose on the table was not a gift, it was a warning. Alana knew it the moment her eyes fell on the petals scattered across that note. Queens don't last long without their kings. She stood frozen, the silence of the house pressing against her like a weight. Every creak of the wooden floor sounded louder, every shadow darker. She was no stranger to fear, but this was different. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was a direct threat to her life. Alana clenched her fists, refusing to let Marcus's intimidation break her spirit. She had grown up hearing stories of kings who tried to destroy their queens, chiefs who plotted against their people, tricksters who spun their webs too wide. And in every story, justice came, sometimes slow, but always certain. This was not going to be any different. The following morning, Alana met with Carter again, this time with an edge in her voice. "He was in my house," she said, slamming the note onto his desk. "This is not about money anymore, Carter. This is about power, and if I don't act now, I may lose more than just money." Carter studied the note, his brow furrowing. "He's desperate. That makes him dangerous. But it also means he's losing his grip. Desperation leads to mistakes." Alana leaned forward. "Then let's make sure he makes one." Meanwhile, Marcus was spiraling. At first, the boardroom humiliation gnawed at his pride. He replayed that moment over and over, the look in Alana's eyes as she reclaimed her seat. The way the executives turned toward her as though she were the sun, and he was nothing more than a shadow. He couldn't accept it. 200 million in his private account wasn't enough to soothe the sting. His empire was slipping, and he had to find a way to crush her before she grew too strong. So, he called in favors. Old friends in politics, crooked lawyers, even a banker who owed him more than one illegal debt. Together they began plotting ways to strip Alana of her empire. "She doesn't have the stomach for this," Marcus told Serena one night as they drank on his balcony overlooking the city. "She was raised on stories and morals, but the world doesn't care about stories. The world cares about who strikes first." Serena smirked. "Then strike." Alana, however, wasn't just waiting to be struck. She was preparing. She spent the next week meeting quietly with allies Carter had introduced her to, trusted accountants, security specialists, and even an old family friend named Baba Ade, a Nigerian elder who had once been her father's closest confidant. Baba Ade was no businessman, but he carried the wisdom of countless folktales, and his words often cut deeper than numbers. "You are walking in the lion's den, child," he told her, sitting beneath the shade of a mango tree in his backyard. "But remember, the lion only fears the fire. Light your fire, and he will bow." Alana nodded, taking his words to heart. She knew exactly what he meant. Marcus had the cunning of a lion, but if she could ignite the right fire, his arrogance would consume him. The fire came sooner than she expected. One morning, Carter called her urgently. "We have a problem. Marcus has filed a motion claiming you're mentally unfit to manage your holdings. He's using your silence over the years as evidence, that you never attended board meetings, that you let him handle everything, that you weren't aware of your own fortune." Alana's heart raced. "He's trying to paint me as incapable." "Yes," Carter said grimly. "And if the court accepts this, he could be granted temporary control of your assets again." Alana's pulse pounded. Marcus wasn't just attacking her finances, he was attacking her identity. He wanted to make the world believe she was incompetent, that she had been nothing but a bystander in her own life. But she wasn't the woman he thought she was anymore. The hearing was set for Friday. Alana arrived in a simple but elegant gown, her posture steady, her presence commanding. Marcus was already there, smirking as though victory were certain. His lawyer painted her as naive, a woman too blinded by love to understand the complexities of business, a passive figurehead who should never have been trusted with millions. But when it was Alana's turn to speak, she didn't crumble. She rose to her feet, her voice firm, her words clear. I may not have been at every board meeting, but I signed every paper. I trusted my husband, because trust is what marriage is built on. But trust should never be mistaken for incompetence. My name is on every company. My name is on every share. And I am not only capable of managing them, I am determined to protect them. The courtroom murmured, her words slicing through Marcus's case like a blade. Even the judge leaned forward, intrigued. Marcus's jaw tightened. He hadn't expected her to fight so boldly. The judge ruled in her favor, dismissing Marcus's claim as baseless. The gavel's echo was like thunder in Marcus's chest. He had lost again. That night, however, Alana returned home to find something far more chilling than a rose or a note. On her doorstep lay a broken mirror, its shards glinting under the moonlight. Scrawled across the largest piece, in black ink, were the words, "Every queen bleeds." Alana's breath caught. The message was clear. Marcus wasn't done. But instead of fear, she felt anger surge within her veins. This was no longer a battle for money. It was a battle for her dignity, her survival, and her legacy. Marcus, in his arrogance, had forgotten the oldest lesson of all folktales. When you push too far, the gods themselves intervene. And though Alana didn't yet know how, the universe was already weaving his downfall. Because in Betrayal's story, the trickster always pays. The broken mirror stayed in Alana's mind long after she swept the shards away. Every glinting piece had whispered the same thing. Marcus would not stop until she was destroyed. He wasn't fighting for money anymore. He was fighting for dominance, for pride, for the twisted satisfaction of watching her crumble. But Alana was no longer the woman who could be broken with fear. She called in additional security, hired trusted guards, and had cameras installed across every corner of her estate. Still, she knew Marcus's attacks would not come in the form of shadows creeping in the night. No, his real weapon was sabotage. And soon enough, it came. It began with a whisper in the business world. Global Frontier Holdings, the crown jewel of Alana's investments, was suddenly the subject of ugly rumors. Anonymous reports claimed the company was laundering money, funneling profits through shell accounts, and even cutting deals with corrupt officials in Africa. At first, Alana brushed it off as gossip. But then, the media picked it up. News anchors spoke her name with suspicion. Headlines flashed across screens. Majority shareholder under fire. Share prices dipped, investors pulled out, and within days, the empire she had only just claimed began to look shaky. Carter stormed into her office with files in hand. Marcus is behind this. He's leaking false reports, feeding lies to the press, maybe even bribing journalists. He's trying to destroy your credibility. Alana slammed her fist on the table. Then we prove him wrong. I want an audit, full transparency. We'll show the world the truth. Carter hesitated. An audit takes time, and Marcus is playing for speed. If this continues, the company could collapse before we clear your name. Alana's chest tightened, but she refused to waver. Then we move faster. If Marcus wants war, he's going to get it. Meanwhile, Marcus celebrated quietly. He sat in a penthouse suite with Serena by his side, sipping champagne as the news played. "Look at her," he said, watching Alana's face appear on the screen. "She's scrambling. She doesn't know how to fight in this world." Serena curled against him, her voice smooth. "You've got her cornered, Marcus. Finish it." "Oh, I will," Marcus said with a dark smile. "She thinks she can sit at my table, but she doesn't realize the game is mine. And when I'm done, she'll be nothing more than a cautionary tale." But Marcus had underestimated the strength of Alana's heritage. That weekend she traveled to a cultural retreat center outside Atlanta, where elders gathered to share stories and wisdom. She sat with Baba Adi once again, her heart heavy. "Marcus is poisoning everything," she confessed. "The world believes his lies. How do I fight back against shadows?" Baba Adi leaned on his staff, his eyes wise. "Child, do you know the tale of the tortoise and the leopard?" Alana shook her head. "The leopard was strong, feared by all, but the tortoise, though small, knew the power of truth. When the leopard tried to trap him with lies, the tortoise exposed them one by one, until the leopard's own pride destroyed him. You, my daughter, must be the tortoise. Do not fight lies with anger. Fight them with truth so bright the world cannot look away." His words sank deep. She knew what she had to do. Alana called for an emergency press conference. The room was packed with reporters, cameras flashing as she stepped onto the stage. Dressed in a simple yet regal African print dress, she spoke with calm authority. "There are rumors about me and the companies I hold. I'm here today to tell you the truth. For years, I trusted others to handle what was mine. That was my mistake. But trust should never be mistaken for guilt. Starting today, every company under my name will undergo an independent audit. Every figure, every document, every deal will be made public. If I am guilty, let the world see. But if I am innocent, then let the world know who is feeding you lies." The room erupted with questions, but her words had already made the evening news. And slowly, investors began to pause. The transparency was bold, unheard of. Some returned cautiously, while others held their breath for the audit results. It was a gamble, but it shifted the narrative. Marcus, watching from his penthouse, smashed his glass against the wall. "She's turning it around," he snarled. Serena eyed him carefully. "Then maybe it's time to stop playing games. If she won't step down, make her fall." Marcus turned to her, a dangerous gleam in his eyes. "Oh, she will fall. If the truth won't bury her, then lies will. And I've got more lies than she has strength." Days later, Alana's mansion was raided. Federal agents stormed the gates, waving warrants. They seized files, hard drives, even her personal laptop. The accusations? Fraud, money laundering, embezzlement. Alana stood in disbelief as they carted out boxes of her life. "This is Marcus," she whispered. "He planted this." But the agents didn't care. They were acting on tips, documents that appeared legitimate. And as Carter later explained, those documents had Marcus's fingerprints all over them. Doctored files, fabricated accounts, false evidence slipped into the system. "He's crossing lines," Carter said, his voice grave. "This isn't just sabotage. This is criminal framing." Alana sat in silence, her chest aching. Marcus wasn't going to stop until she was ruined completely. But deep inside, her fire still burned. "If he wants to play dirty," she whispered, "then he's about to find out the soil he stands on cannot hold him." That night, Alana received another letter, but this time it wasn't a threat. It was from an anonymous whistleblower inside Marcus's circle. "You don't know me, but I know him. Marcus is planning more than sabotage. He has accounts overseas, documents hidden in a safe deposit box, and a plan to flee with everything once you're destroyed. If you want proof, meet me tomorrow at 3 p.m. at the old rail yard. Alana's pulse quickened. It could be a trap, but it could also be the lifeline she needed. She folded the letter and whispered, "The tortoise and the leopard. Truth will always come to light." The next day, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Alana arrived at the rail yard with Carter by her side and security trailing close. The place was empty, silent, except for the rustle of wind through the weeds. Then, a man stepped out of the shadows, nervous, sweating, his hands clutching a folder. "My name's Daniel," he said, his voice shaky. "I worked for Marcus. I can't do it anymore. He's gone too far." He handed Alana the folder. Inside were copies of offshore accounts, forged documents Marcus had planted against her, and even recorded phone calls of him bragging about destroying her. Alana's breath caught. This was the fire Baba Adi had spoken of, the truth strong enough to burn through Marcus's lies. But before she could thank Daniel, headlights swept across the rail yard. A black SUV screeched to a halt, and men in suits poured out, guns drawn. Marcus had found them. "Run!" Daniel shouted. Alana and Carter dove behind a stack of crates as the men advanced. Shots rang out, echoing through the night. Alana's heart pounded. This was no longer about business. Marcus was ready to kill to protect his empire of lies. And in that terrifying moment, Alana realized something she had not before. This wasn't just about survival. It was about legacy. Because if she fell tonight, Marcus would not just steal her money. He would erase the story of who she was. And Alana Bennett was not meant to be erased. The gunfire echoed through the abandoned rail yard like thunder cracking the night. Sparks flew as bullets struck the rusting tracks, the sound of metal groaning under the assault. Alana crouched behind the crates, her heart hammering in her chest. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to be dodging bullets in the dark, fighting for her life. But Marcus had dragged her into this storm, and she refused to let him write her ending. Beside her, Carter was pale, gripping his phone as he whispered, "I've called the police. Just hold on." Alana peered around the edge of the crate. Daniel, the whistleblower, was sprinting across the yard with the folder still in hand. Two of Marcus's men gave chase, their weapons raised. "Daniel!" she shouted. He turned, eyes wide, just as a shot rang out. He stumbled, the folder flying from his hands as he collapsed to the ground. Alana gasped, instinctively rising to run toward him. Carter grabbed her wrist. "Don't! They'll kill you!" But Alana wrenched free. She wasn't going to let Marcus bury the truth, not tonight. She dashed across the open yard, bullets whizzing past her ears. The wind whipped at her hair, her legs burning as she lunged forward. She dropped to her knees beside Daniel, clutching his trembling hand. The folder lay inches away, its papers spilling across the gravel. She grabbed it, stuffing as many sheets as she could into her jacket before pulling Daniel closer. His voice was faint, but urgent. "Don't let him win." Alana's throat tightened. "I won't. I promise." A spotlight suddenly washed over her, blinding her eyes. One of Marcus's men shouted, "There she is!" Alana clutched the folder and scrambled to her feet. Carter and the guards were waving frantically from behind an old rail car. She sprinted toward them, the folder pressed against her chest as if it were her very heartbeat. Just as she reached the others, sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights flashed as police cars swarmed the yard. Marcus's men scattered like rats, leaping back into their SUV and speeding off into the night. Alana collapsed against the rail car, gasping for air. She still clutched the folder tightly, refusing to let go. Later that night, safe in Carter's office, Alana spread the papers across the desk. They were explosive, Offshore accounts in Marcus's name, transfers linking him to shell companies, even blueprints of fake evidence planted against her. But one document stood out. It was a ledger, hand-signed by Marcus, detailing payments to a mysterious figure identified only as MK. The sums were enormous, far beyond what even Marcus had stolen. Carter leaned over the paper, his brow furrowed. "Who is MK?" Alana shook her head slowly. "I don't know, but whoever it is, Marcus is paying them to keep something hidden. This isn't just about me anymore. This is bigger." She traced her finger along the ledger, her thoughts racing. Marcus wasn't just sabotaging her empire. He was part of something darker, something that tied his betrayal to forces far beyond their marriage. Marcus, meanwhile, was furious. He slammed his fist against the glass table in his penthouse, sending shards flying as Serena recoiled in shock. "You told me it was handled," he barked at the man on the phone. "How could you let her walk away with the folder?" The voice on the other end stammered excuses, but Marcus wasn't listening. His mind was ablaze with rage and fear. That folder was never supposed to leave Daniel's hands. And now Alana had it. He ended the call and poured himself a drink, his hands shaking. Serena touched his arm gently. "She's stronger than you thought," she whispered. Marcus glared at her. "She doesn't know what she's holding. If she did, she'd already be dead." He turned toward the window, staring at the city lights. The name on the ledger echoed in his mind, MK. If Alana uncovered that connection, it wouldn't just destroy him. It would destroy everything he had built. And so, he made a decision. "She wants war," he muttered. "Then war it is." The next morning, Alana met with Carter again, this time with steely determination in her eyes. "I want to go public," she said, tapping the folder. "These papers prove Marcus is behind the lies. If I expose him, the world will finally see the truth." Carter hesitated. "It's not that simple. Yes, these documents are damning, but without context, Marcus can claim they're forged. You need more than papers. You need testimony. And with Daniel gone..." Alana's chest ached at the memory of Daniel's final words. "Don't let him win." She looked at Carter, her jaw set. "Then I'll find someone else. Somebody out there knows the truth about Marcus. And I'm going to bring them into the light." That night, Alana sat alone in her study, the flickering lamp casting long shadows on the walls. She reread the ledger again and again, her eyes lingering on the name. MK. Her thoughts wandered back to her mother's words. "When the hunter hides his footprints, follow the broken branches." Marcus had hidden his tracks well, but the ledger was a broken branch. If she followed it, it would lead her to the heart of his secrets. But Alana also knew one thing. Following that trail would put her in even greater danger than the bullets at the rail yard. The danger came quicker than expected. 2 nights later, as Alana drove home from a meeting, a black SUV swerved into her lane. Her tires screeched as she fought the wheel, the car skidding across the asphalt. Another SUV boxed her in from behind, forcing her to the shoulder. Her guards in the trailing car leapt out, weapons drawn, as masked men poured from the SUVs. The night exploded into chaos, shouts, gunshots, the metallic clang of fists against steel. Alana ducked low, her body trembling as glass shattered around her. She could hear Carter's voice through her earpiece, shouting instructions, but all she could focus on was survival. Her guard yanked her from the car, pushing her towards safety. "Go, run!" She sprinted into the darkness, her lungs burning, her heart pounding like a drum. Behind her, the fight raged, but she didn't dare look back. By the time she reached safety, her clothes were torn, her face streaked with sweat and fear. But she was alive, and more determined than ever. Marcus was no longer just a betrayer. He was a predator, circling her with increasing boldness. But Alana had something he didn't: truth and the wisdom of generations whispering in her ear. She returned to Baba Ade the following morning, her spirit weary. "Why won't he stop?" she asked, her voice breaking. "What more does he want?" The old man's eyes glimmered as he spoke. "When a man drinks salt water, his thirst never ends. Marcus has tasted greed, and now he cannot stop. But do not fear, child. The river may rage, but it always returns to the ocean. His path will lead him to his own destruction." Alana closed her eyes, letting the words settle in her heart. She knew the end was coming, but the journey there would be perilous. That evening, Carter called with news that both chilled and electrified her. "I've traced the initials MK," he said. "It stands for Malik Kadim. He's a powerful businessman in Dubai, known for laundering money, running underground networks, and funding political campaigns across continents. If Marcus is tied to him, it explains everything." Alana's eyes widened. "Malik Kadim. He's not just another partner. He's a kingmaker." "Exactly," Carter said. "And if you expose that link, Marcus won't just lose his empire. He'll make enemies of men who don't forgive betrayal." Alana's chest tightened. This was bigger than marriage, bigger than money. Marcus was entangled in a web that stretched far beyond Atlanta, and she was standing in the middle of it. That night, as she sat by her window staring at the city lights, she whispered to herself, "You tried to erase me, Marcus. But now, you've given me the power to erase you." She didn't know exactly how yet, but she knew the path was set. The tortoise had found the leopard's weakness, and soon the hunter would become the hunted. The name, Malik Kadim, echoed in Alana's mind like a war drum. It wasn't just another name on a ledger. It was the shadow behind Marcus's schemes, the silent partner funding his betrayals. If Marcus had tied himself to a man like that, then the war was no longer between husband and wife. It was between Alana and a network of power so vast it could swallow her whole. Yet she did not tremble. She remembered Baba Adi's words. "The river may rage, but it always returns to the ocean." Marcus's greed was leading him toward his own ruin. All she had to do was follow the river to its end. Carter laid out the stakes in his office the next morning. He tapped a map of Dubai pinned to the wall. "Malik Kadim's headquarters are here. He's hosting a private investors conference in 2 weeks. Marcus is on the guest list. If we can intercept Marcus there, catch him with Malik, and record proof of their dealings, we can expose both of them. The U.S. and international courts will eat this up." Alana frowned, her eyes narrowing. "And if Malik realizes what we're doing?" Carter hesitated. "Then we won't walk out of Dubai alive." The room fell silent. Alana looked down at the folder still clutched to her chest, Daniel's dying gift. His words echoed again. "Don't let him win." She lifted her chin, her voice steady. "Then we'll walk in prepared." Marcus, meanwhile, was already planning his escape. He stood in front of a floor-to-ceiling mirror in his penthouse, straightening his tie as Serena lounged nearby. "Dubai is the final step," he said, his reflection staring back at him like a stranger. "Once Malik clears the accounts, I'll have more than enough to disappear. Alana can keep her scraps, but she'll be buried under lawsuits and scandals. By the time she realizes what happened, I'll be untouchable." Serena raised an eyebrow. "And what about Malik?" "Men like him don't just give away money." Marcus smirked. "That's the beauty of it. He thinks I'm loyal. But once I'm out, once the accounts are secure, he'll never see me again." He poured himself a drink, toasting his own reflection. To freedom. But he didn't notice Serena's eyes narrowing. She had seen the way Marcus looked at Alana in the boardroom, the flicker of recognition that he hadn't beaten her yet. And Serena, for all her glamour, knew a man like Marcus was never truly loyal. Not to Alana, not to her, not even to himself. The days leading up to Dubai were filled with tension. Alana prepared quietly, surrounding herself with trusted allies. She hired investigators to study Malik's operations, security consultants to plan escape routes, and even cultural advisors to ensure she blended in without drawing suspicion. At night, she returned to her parents' old house, kneeling before their framed photographs. "I don't know how this ends," she whispered, "but I will not let Marcus erase what you built in me." It was during one of those nights that she dreamed again. Her mother appeared, this time standing at the edge of a desert, the wind whipping her wrapper around her frame. "Daughter," she said softly, "the scorpion believes its sting is invincible, but it forgets that fire burns hotter. Do not fear the sting. Be the fire." Alana woke with tears in her eyes, but her heart steady. She was ready. The flight to Dubai was long, the hours dragging as Alana stared out the window at the endless sky. Carter sat beside her, reviewing files. "This is it," he said quietly. "One wrong move, and Marcus will know we're onto him. Malik doesn't tolerate betrayal. If Marcus slips, Malik will destroy him himself. Our goal is to make that betrayal visible." Alana nodded, her fingers tightening around the folder in her lap. The city of Dubai shimmered like a jewel when they landed. Glass towers rising into the heavens, lights reflecting off the water, wealth dripping from every street corner. But beneath the glitter lay shadows. And it was into those shadows that Alana walked. The investors' conference was held in a luxury hotel overlooking the Gulf. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, every table lined with men and women in tailored suits, their conversations hushed but heavy with power. Alana entered with Carter, her presence quiet but commanding. She wore a simple gown, her African print scarf draped elegantly across her shoulders. She wasn't there to dazzle, she was there to observe. And then she saw him. Marcus stood across the room, laughing with Malik Kadim himself. Malik was taller than she expected, his suit sharp, his face cold, his every gesture exuding control. Marcus leaned in close, whispering into his ear like a sycophant, his smile wide but his eyes calculating. Alana's chest tightened. This was the man who had once held her hand at the dinner table, the man who whispered love into her ears. Now he was nothing more than a pawn in the hands of a greater predator. She turned to Carter. "We need proof." Carter adjusted the small camera hidden in his lapel. "Already recording." For hours they watched. Marcus handed Malik files, whispered promises, even raised a toast with him. But the real moment came when Malik leaned in, his voice caught by Carter's hidden microphone. "Once the transfers are complete, Marcus, you'll have your money. But remember this, betray me, and not even the ocean will hide you." Alana's heart leapt. Proof, solid, undeniable proof. But then, something unexpected happened. As the evening drew to a close, Malik's eyes flicked across the room and landed on Alana. For a brief moment, his cold gaze locked with hers. Then his lips curled into a thin smile. "She's here," he whispered to Marcus. Marcus turned, and when his eyes met Alana's, the smug mask shattered. His face twisted in shock, then fury. "Alana!" The room seemed to freeze. Carter grabbed her arm. "We need to go! Now!" But Malik raised a hand, his voice calm. "No, let her stay. I want to hear what the Queen has to say." The crowd parted, all eyes on her as Alana stepped forward, her scarf trailing behind her like a banner. She met Marcus's glare with steady defiance. "You thought you could erase me," she said softly, but her words carried. "You thought I would bow to your lies, but you were wrong. The empire you tried to steal was never yours. It was mine. And tonight, The world will know the truth. Gasps rippled through the room. Marcus's face turned crimson. You don't know what you're doing, he hissed. But Malik only leaned back in his chair, his smile thin and dangerous. On the contrary, I think she knows exactly what she's doing, and I'd very much like to see how this story ends. That night, chaos followed. Marcus cornered her outside the ballroom, his voice low and venomous. You've ruined everything, he snarled. Do you think Malik will protect you? He'll chew you up and spit you out. Alana stared at him, her voice steady. The difference between you and me, Marcus, is that I'm not afraid of the truth, and the truth will destroy you before it ever touches me. Marcus's hand twitched, as though he wanted to strike her. But Malik's guards appeared, their presence a silent reminder of who truly held power in that moment. Marcus's hand fell, his face twisted with rage. As Alana walked away, she knew the climax was near. Marcus was cornered, desperate, dangerous, and desperate men always make mistakes. The river was rushing toward the ocean, and soon Marcus would drown in it. The night air in Dubai was thick with tension as Alana walked away from the ballroom, Malik's guards trailing silently behind her. Marcus had wanted her erased, destroyed, humiliated. But instead, she had stood before him and reclaimed her voice in the very arena where he thought himself untouchable. Yet victory had not arrived. Not yet. Marcus was desperate, and desperate men were the most dangerous. Carter whispered urgently at her side. We have enough on him now. The recordings, the ledger, the whispers from Malik himself. But Marcus isn't finished. He'll try one last strike. Alana nodded. Her heart was steady, but her body trembled. She knew Carter was right. Marcus would not retreat quietly into the night. He would fight to his last breath, clawing for the scraps of power he believed were his. And the last strike came sooner than expected. At dawn, Marcus barged into Malik's private suite, his voice frantic. You can't let her live, he shouted. She's going to expose us both. Everything we've built, it'll collapse. Malik leaned back in his chair, sipping tea, his face calm. You've been sloppy, Marcus. Too loud, too reckless. A man who cannot control his own house cannot sit at my table. Marcus's face twisted in fury. I gave you everything. I risked everything for you. Malik's eyes hardened. No, Marcus. You risked nothing but your wife's empire. And now you've brought me trouble. Marcus's voice cracked as he leaned forward. Then let me fix it. Give me the chance to end her. Malik raised a hand, silencing him. You think killing her will solve your problem? No. If she dies, the world will look only at you. Her death will not erase her truth. It will ignite it. Marcus staggered back, his face pale. For the first time, he realized Malik no longer saw him as an asset, but as a liability. Meanwhile, Alana sat in her hotel room, staring out at the city skyline. The papers, recordings, and documents spread across the table before her were the culmination of years of betrayal. She finally had the fire to burn through Marcus's lies, but there was a choice to be made. Expose Marcus alone and watch him fall, or expose both Marcus and Malik and risk unleashing enemies so powerful they could stretch their hands across continents to silence her. Her phone buzzed. It was Baba Aid calling from Atlanta. She answered, her voice heavy. Baba, if I reveal Malik too, I may never be safe again. But if I stop at Marcus, justice will only be half done. The old man's voice was calm, yet full of strength. Child, the hawk does not circle halfway. If you are to fly, you must fly fully. Do not dim your fire because you fear the darkness. Burn so brightly that the darkness cannot survive. Alana closed her eyes, tears streaming silently. When she opened them, her decision was made. The next evening, Alana held a press conference in Dubai. The ballroom was packed with reporters from across the world, cameras flashing, lights glaring. She stood at the podium, Carter at her side, the folder and recordings before her. Her voice rang clear, steady, unshaken. For too long, I trusted those who did not deserve my trust. My husband, Marcus Bennett, betrayed me not only as a wife, but as a partner, draining millions from our accounts and conspiring against me. But his betrayal does not stop there. He aligned himself with Malik Kadim, a man whose shadow stretches across continents, laundering money, funding corruption, and destroying lives. Gasps filled the room. Marcus, watching from the back, turned pale as his name was spoken in the same breath as Malik's. These documents, these recordings, Alana continued, raising the folder, are proof of Marcus's theft, proof of Malik's dealings, proof that greed can blind, but truth will always open eyes. I stand here not as a victim, but as a woman who will not be erased, and I vow that their empire of lies ends today. The cameras clicked furiously, reporters shouting questions. The news spread like wildfire across the globe. Within hours, international authorities were mobilized. The fallout was immediate. Marcus was arrested in Dubai that very night, dragged out of his hotel room screaming, his wrists bound in steel. He cursed Alana's name as the cameras caught every second, his empire collapsing before the world. Malik, though more elusive, was not untouchable. Governments froze his accounts. Investigations swarmed his companies, and his empire began to fracture. His power had been challenged, and though he would not fall easily, his invincibility had been shattered. Alana returned to Atlanta weeks later, greeted not with suspicion, but with respect. The same headlines that once called her naive now named her courageous. Investors returned to her companies, her name restored. But the victory was not sweet. It was heavy with scars. She had lost years of trust, endured threats to her life, and carried the memory of Daniel's sacrifice. The wealth, the empire, those were never what she truly sought. What mattered was her dignity, her strength, and the story that would not be silenced. She returned to her parents' old house, standing once more beneath the mango tree where Baba Ade had counseled her. The air was warm, the evening calm. "Baba," she whispered, "I did not dim my fire." And for the first time in months, she allowed herself to smile. Marcus, in prison, replayed every step of his downfall. He remembered the smugness in the courtroom, the arrogance in the boardroom, the fury in Dubai. He had believed himself the spider, weaving the perfect web. But he had forgotten the broom, and Alana had swept him away. The folktale had reached its end. The trickster had been exposed. The queen had reclaimed her throne. And the empire built on lies had crumbled beneath the weight of truth. But like all great stories, the lesson remained. Greed blinds, but wisdom restores. Betrayal may wound, but resilience heals. And no matter how dark the night, the fire of truth will always rise.